Look, we've all met that person. Maybe you are even that type of person. You know exactly who I'm talking about. The one who just cannot let a question go. The one who always needs to see for themselves. You tell them, "Don't touch that," and their hand is halfway there before the sentence is finished. It isn't that they're trying to be a brother or start a fight. It's not even really about rebellion, if we're being honest. It's something older, something much more fundamental than that. It's this deep-seated, gut-level need to experience the world firsthand instead of just taking someone else's word for it. There's a very specific brand of restlessness that lives inside a truly curious brain. I'm not talking about the comfortable curiosity of crossword puzzles or nature documentaries on a Friday night. I mean the dangerous kind. The kind of curiosity that keeps you staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. because you followed a random thought down a rabbit hole you probably weren't supposed to enter. And now you can't find your way back out. This is the exact impulse that built every single civilization we've ever known. And if we're being fair, it's the same one that burned most of them to the ground, too. Think about it. We went to the moon because of that itch. We built submarines to see the bottom of the ocean, launched satellites to map the stars, and figured out how to split the atom itself. But then, there's the flip side. We used that same drive to build chemical weapons. We manufactured diseases in labs. We designed surveillance systems so incredibly thorough that the concept of privacy is basically a ghost at this point. The same human spark that wrote symphonies and cured polio is also engineering the tools of our own extinction. Here's the thing that nobody really wants to say out loud. Curiosity is not inherently good. And the oldest story in the Western tradition, the one recorded at the very beginning, though from theological perspective is actually about sin, but there is something deeper. I think we've given a shallow reading or interpretation to it for a very long time. What it's really about is what happens when the most powerful force in the human mind operates without a single guardrail. The story is Adam and Eve, but the psychology is yours. My name is John, and I explore and illustrate psychological archetypes found in the Bible through my artwork. If you find meaning or insight in these reflections, please consider subscribing, liking, and sharing this channel with anyone who might benefit from it. I want you to picture the garden, but forget the way the children's Bible showed it to you. Get rid of the soft lighting and the petting zoo animals. Instead, try to imagine this overwhelming, almost nauseating perfection of a place where everything you could ever need exists before you even feel the urge for it. You've never been hungry. You've never been cold. You've never spent a night wondering if things are going to be okay, because things have only ever been okay. Every singles day. Now imagine what that does to a brain that was literally built for problem solving. It's like a high-performance engine idling in a parking lot. Then the serpent shows up. And here's the weird part. He doesn't attack. He doesn't threaten. He doesn't even lie. Well, not at first. He just asks a question. A simple, almost innocent little nudge. Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? That's it. That's the whole move opening. Suddenly, Eve is standing at the edge of a tree she's walked past 100 times without a second thought. She knows the rules, but now, someone is asking her to think about why the rules exist. He's inviting her to interrogate what she's always just accepted on trust. You can almost feel the shift, the moment that question hits her mind like a stone dropped into a still pond, and the ripples start moving outward before she can catch them. She looks at the fruit, and the text says something that I've always found a little physically unsettling. It says she saw that the fruit was good for food, pleasing to the eye, and desirable for gaining wisdom. She wasn't being reckless. She was doing something way more dangerous. She was making a reasoned, logical case to herself for why the one boundary she'd been given was probably the one she should cross. And Adam? He's right there. He eats too. Not because he's convinced by a big debate. The text doesn't give us any deep internal process for him. He just takes it. Like someone watching a person they trust step off a cliff and thinking, well, they seemed pretty confident about it. The fruit is eaten. The knowledge hits. And immediately, I mean instantly, they cover themselves. Not from God, from each other. That moment right there, the hiding, the covering up, that's the part I want to stick with for a second. Because what Eve did in front of that tree wasn't evil. That's the point I keep coming back to. It was actually a perfect demonstration of what Leon Festinger called cognitive dissonance. It's that massive psychological tension that happens when what we want to believe slams into what we've been told is true. The mind doesn't just sit with that discomfort. It goes to work. It starts constructing. It finds a way to make the forbidden thing look like the only reasonable choice. And look at her reasoning. It wasn't random. Festinger's research showed us that the more invested a person is in an outcome, the more elaborate the justification they'll build to get there. The fruit looked good. It seemed wise. It felt like the smart move. That wasn't a sign of weakness. That was her brain doing exactly what brains do when desire and rules collide. But wait, there's more. The serpent's opening line. Did God really say? Isn't a temptation to disobey. It's an invitation to doubt the source. It's a push to reconsider whether the authority telling you no is actually on your side. In the world of persuasion, we call this source derogation. It's the oldest trick in the book. You don't have to tell someone to do the wrong thing. You just have to make them wonder if the person who told them not to was lying to them. If you've ever been in a relationship that ended badly, you've probably felt this exact cognitive trap. There was probably a moment early on where someone whispered, "Has anyone ever told you how much those people are holding you back?" Just the mechanism, 3,000 years apart. On the surface, this is a story about disobedience and pride. But underneath, and this is where it gets a little uncomfortable, I think we're actually looking at the wound of unexplained scarcity. Stay with me on this. They had the whole garden, every single tree, total abundance. And yet, they know. Psychology tells us that when a person who has everything is told they can't have one specific thing, that thing starts to grow. It doesn't stay small, it becomes a giant. In our heads, restriction creates a perceived value that has absolutely nothing to do with what the thing is actually worth. This is reactance, that state of mind that triggers the second we feel our freedom being limited. Our brain treats a prohibition like a threat to our autonomy. So the mind responds by making the forbidden thing look like the most important thing in the world. Eve didn't wake up wanting wisdom more than anything else. But after the question, the fruit was everything. The restriction turned that tree into a mirror, and what she saw in it was the version of herself she'd never been allowed to be. The wound isn't just about breaking a rule, it's that quiet ache of feeling like you're being kept from your true potential. And let me tell you, that ache has a very long shelf life. Let's step out of the garden and look at your life for a second. You know that feeling when someone sets a rule, a policy at work, a boundary in a relationship, and the moment they say don't, a part of you immediately wants to? Not because you're a jerk, because you're human. Your brain is literally wired to treat a no as information about value. The thing behind the velvet rope is always more interesting than the thing you're allowed to walk past. This is why leaked info spreads like wildfire. Why you can't handle the truth makes you want to handle it immediately. But here's the real talk. The people most at risk from unchecked curiosity aren't the reckless ones. They're the intelligent ones. The thoughtful, deep-thinking people. They are the ones who are good enough at reasoning that they can build a bulletproof justification for almost anything they've already decided they want to do. Eve wasn't impulsive. She was analytical. The fruit checked out. The logic was sound. And that is exactly what made it so dangerous. If you've ever used your high IQ to talk yourself into a choice that your gut knew was a disaster, welcome to the club. And then there's Adam. He's the social pressure side of the coin. He watches Eve eat. He sees she's still standing. He thinks, well, she seems fine. I don't want to be the only one who didn't try it. In 2026, that's the person in the group chat who stays silent while things cross a line because they don't want to be that guy. Curiosity used as social camouflage. It still costs you the garden. Here's the question I keep banging my head against. And I'll be honest, I don't have a clean answer. If God knew, and in this context he knows everything, why put the tree there at all? The standard Sunday school answer is free will. God wanted people who choose to be there, not robots. And I get that. And too. But that answer has always felt a little too tidy. It's like it solves the problem without actually feeling the weight of it. Because look at the setup. A world of abundance, with one specific no placed in the most central spot possible, right next to a being who is designed to solve problems and justify choices, who is then left alone with a voice that is specifically built to ask the wrong questions. Was it a test? A boundary for protection? Or was the fall somehow part of the plan all along? Theologians have been screaming at each other about this for centuries, and I'm definitely not going to settle it today. But I will say this. The psychology of the setup tells us something undeniably true about being human. We are all surrounded by things we've been told aren't for us. Some of those rules are arbitrary. Some are there to save our lives. And most of us? Most of the time, we have no idea which is which. So what do you do with a curiosity that you can't fully trust? I want to hit pause here because I genuinely want to know what's going on in your head. We've been talking about Eve's logic and Adam's silence, but let's bring it home. Have you ever talked yourself into something using perfectly sound logic, even though you knew, deep down, it was going to cost you? Did you end up standing in the wreckage of a reasoned decision? Drop a comment. You don't have to give the messy details if you don't want to. Just tell me the shape of it. What was the logic you used? I read every single one of these, and honestly, the best stuff usually happens in the conversation below the video. There's no soft landing here. I'm not going to lie to you. They eat, they hide, they cover up. God walks into the garden and asks, "Where are you?" And I've always found that question so tender. It's not a failure of omniscience. It's an invitation to come clean. But they don't. They blame. Adam points at Eve. Eve points at the snake. The relationship breaks instantly. This is exactly what Viktor Frankl was talking about when he studied meaning-making. Frankl grief, that suffering only destroys us when it's meaningless. When there's no narrative, no lesson, nothing to carry forward, the fracture is real, the loss is total. But here's the weird part. The story doesn't end with a lightning bolt. It ends with God making them clothes, after the blame, after the hiding. The flimsy leaves have they tried to use to cover their shame? They get replaced with something real, something made for them. Post-traumatic growth isn't about pretending the damage didn't happen. It's about the fact that something new emerged because of the rupture. The curiosity that cost them the garden is also the beginning of the only kind of wisdom that actually matters, the kind you earn by living through the consequences. I want to hit pause here, because I genuinely want to know what's going on in your head. We've been talking about Eve's logic and Adam's silence, but let's bring it home. Have you ever talked yourself into something using perfectly sound logic, even though you knew deep down it was going to cost you? Did you end up standing in the wreckage of a reasoned decision? Drop a comment. You don't have to give the messy details if you don't want to. Just tell me the shape of it. What was the logic you used? I read every single one of these, and honestly, the best stuff usually happens in the conversation below the video. Here's my hot take on this story. The curiosity? It wasn't the sin. I don't think the text actually suggests that curiosity itself is the problem. What it's documenting is what happens when you take the most powerful cognitive engine we have and you run it without the one thing that makes it safe: humility. Eve saw the fruit was good. She was right. Adam trusted someone he loved. Usually, that's a good thing. The serpent asked an interesting question. Inquiry is not evil. What none of them did was stop. They didn't exercise the capacity to hold the question without turning it into an action. They couldn't sit with "I wonder" without rushing toward "I will." Psychiatrist Dan Siegel calls this reflective capacity. It's the ability to watch your own mind rather than just being driven by it. It's the gap between the impulse and the action. That gap? That's where wisdom lives. This isn't a story about the danger of curiosity. It's a story about what happens when curious people skip the reflection phase. We built the moon landing in that gap. We built antibiotics in that gap. But we also built things that keep us up at night. The difference isn't the curiosity. It's whether we're willing to ask, "Should I?" before we ask, "Can I?" So I'll leave you with this. Not a list of 5 steps to be better, but just a question to sit with. What is the thing you're most curious about right now? That door you're thinking about opening? Do you actually know why you want to walk through it? Is it a genuine search for truth, or is it just that forbidden fruit logic whispering in your ear? Curiosity is sacred. I really believe that. It's the reason we write music and build hospitals for strangers. It's not something to kill. It's something to know yourself inside of. When has curiosity pulled you into the wreckage? And what did you find out about yourself once you were there? Drop it in the comments. I want the honest version. And if this one hit home, you really need to check out the previous video on the psychology of falling from abundance. It's the prequel to everything we just talked about. The link is on the screen and below. See you in the next one. We're just scratching the surface.